Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mining Now. I'm your host, Jared Downey. We have L&H Industrial. If you watch Mining Now, you've seen them on the show. Always a great discussion with them. We have Dustin Roush back on the show. He is the third-generation owner and chief revenue officer. I'm not sure why I'm reading this. I like as if I don't know who L&H is by now. And we have Cory Hancock. He is the Canadian account manager for L&H Canada. Nice to see you pushing hard into the Canadian market. That's exciting. We're going to talk about that. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Dustin, let's go. For anybody who's new to the show, just bird's eye view of L&H.
Yeah, started in 1964 by my grandfather, and then he was historically, they started out as an oil filled machine shop, and in the 80s he expanded the business. He invested in a brand new facility, and the oil market tanked at that time, and that actually forced him into the mining industry. So because of the early 1980s and the way that the market hit his businesses, he had to liquidate some of them, and then it forced him into the coal mining industry. And, my uncles took it over in the late 90s, early 2000s, and they really took it from a regional mom and pop shop, basically expanded it, started going international, hiring engineers, and expanding the business.
I don't want to get insanely personal, but I'm going to take a swing at a bit of a personal question.
Yeah.
What family? There's lots of stats on how it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Going multi-generational.
Yeah.
L&H has had the exact opposite result.
Yeah.
It's just grown. And is there sort of a family culture translates to a business culture? What sort of happens that's making that happen for you?
I think, this is just a personal opinion. There's no stats around it, but I think the main thing that makes L&H Industrial work from a family aspect is you have to earn your salt. That's what we call it. You got to earn your salt. So all of us third generation owners, we started out by either cleaning the shop, sweeping the floors. You just don't get it handed to you because of your last name. But anybody that does something, so like my cousin Jason Persfield, he started up, he's COO right now. He started up the field service division and grew that. My stake in the company was actually L&H Canada, so it's great to be doing this show live here in Canada. Oh, nice. So that was my stake in the show, and I think that's the secret is you can't be giving any generation, a free pass. They got to earn it.
Yeah, and I guess we should touch on it's also 60 years now, right?
Yeah, we're up to 60 years.
Wow,
this is the anniversary. So
one more personal question.
Yeah,
that sense of responsibility though, third generation, now there's a legacy.
Yeah.
So what's that? Is it something you guys talk about, or is it just sort of there?
Yeah, no, we talk about it all the time, and we do a lot of succession planning. We spend a lot of time together as the board and as the ownership group, talking about the business, what direction we're going, and it's been very interesting. I know coming in my early mid 20s, I came into the business, and just the progression in this short amount of time that I've been there in the last 15 years, it's incredible. And the nice thing about it is, we just bought one of my uncles out. We got him bought out. My other uncle, he is actually taking the business and looking at it. He's in his mid 50s now, and he's got some other passions, but they still are networked inside of L&H. So he fired up a company by the name of Evercore. That's a subsidiary of L&H, and we're looking at the nuclear power play. Right now. And, just everybody.
Like I was just dropping that in, and now I'm not. I got all these other questions.
I know. I'm like, let's talk about that.
Wait a second.
Yeah. Well, it's nice. I guess the point that I was trying to make is that everybody inside of the business has their area that they enjoy. And so what our youngest cousin, or the newest member to the L&H ownership group, he's doing basically Internet of Things. So we are starting to light up all of our equipment.
Wow.
And that's something that,
it's a whole new,
whole new deal, and we allow each other to go do these things that we are interested in. And I think that's why the company is where it's at right now.
Yeah, it's I've literally used your company in conversations as an example of a company, third generation, keeps on pushing, keeps innovating, not afraid to invest. I actually just had one of your I won't try to say it because I don't want to get it wrong, but they're actually they're one of your customers.
Mm-hmm.
And they were talking about or no, they're one of your suppliers, sorry. And they talked about how heavily you invest and just how good you are to work with. And that's off camera. That's just me chatting with someone. Right. So it's neat to see that. Now, so Cory, Canadian market, are you based in Canada?
I am, yeah. There's a handful of us in Canada and basically obviously support the US group. So yeah, I'm kind of originally in Ontario, but now based on the West Coast.
So what's sort of the focus of L&H in the Canadian? Is it a different focus or is it an expansion or just a continuation of the US market?
Yeah, I mean, Dustin can probably talk on the early days of Canada, but I mean, the original kind of market was Fort McMurray, right? Like kind of big population of mining and shovels, and it kind of just was a natural fit for what they were doing, not just at the time, but historically have been doing. And then kind of more recently, within the last, 15 to 10 years kind of thing, things have spread out a bit more. So like obviously across Canada, BC, Ontario, Quebec, and so forth.
Right. Do you want to expand on that a little?
Yeah, I think, obviously the oil sands are a heavy mining play for any aftermarket parts company. So the focus was originally it was Alberta, it was the oil sands. We were doing some dragline component work and some outages. But as that grew, we just keep expanding it. And right now we are heavy on sales and engineering. And we're probably going to get heavier on engineering because there's some needs in the market that the customers are showing up. And then the other thing that I guess we could talk about real quick is we are doing some hydro dam work. So, he's been running around trying to kind of tap into that market specifically for BC because we've done a major investment with some machine tooling that is kind of suited for the hydro dam work.
So what happens is that someone comes to you, is a lot of it you going and sort of developing those sectors, or someone says, can you say yes, make the investment and then try to grow that segment? It sort of sounds like you get a lot of requests that are sort of all starting as one-offs, but then they grow or something.
Yeah, we've had it both ways. So, to be fair about it, like we do some wind turbine work. That market we hired a gentleman that came from that industry and then he pushed into it. And then the other portion, and we've also had it where we buy some machine tools or something or that that market knows that we're acquiring, and then they kind of we get drug into it.
Right.
So the larger the machine tool opens up some markets because it's heavy capital investment.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's not 50 people with that.
Exactly.
Yeah. I got sent a note here, the forged yoke handle design. I don't know which one of you want to touch on that a little bit. But I think it's worth noting. So that's kind of not specific to the Canadian market, but
yeah, it was designed here.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I can speak to that. Like it essentially came out of the Canadian market kind of as a request from customers, basically being like, hey, we have this OEM design that was fine, but not great. They had some issues with it.
Yeah.
Weren't getting the life basically because of challenges. But yeah, basically I think the story was we were actually approached by a mine originally and kind of as like, this is the problem. Can you guys help us?
And what was the problem?
It was essentially it was cracking that would take the handle out of service. Cracking obviously for a variety of reasons, material design and how it was actually designed. Really probably a little bit undersized for the machine it was actually operating on. And then we were basically able to take it and kind of upgrade it and change out a few, forging or put forgings in where there's castings and so forth.
So why was it like the density of why did it come undersized from the OEM? Because was it the density of the material, or what was sort of causing that initially?
I think, correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but I think it was that some of these machines are legacy machines of multiple years. Yeah. So a rope shovel has been built 100 years ago when it started, and over the years they've added, made bigger. So obviously they don't redesign a machine, every generation. They redesign components of it and make it a bit bigger, put a bigger dipper on it and so forth.
Right, but every component does get swapped out just because you made, right.
Yeah, so it was probably essentially the one component that was now too small for the machine or under-designed for the size that it was operating in.
Is that fairly common to see that kind of thing happening?
I'd say I mean, there's always.
I'm not trying to pick on any of the OEM.
Yeah,
it's just
there's always something there. And then the other thing is that it was like that particular product was a casting, and when you have a casted product, it's very hard. When you get that cracking, it's hard to fix it out there in the field. So you almost have to have it because you got pre and post heats on the welding.
Yeah.
and once the OEM's handle started to crack, I mean, it was just perpetual, and you couldn't get ahead of it. And that's why we changed to the yoke. The forged fabricated yoke is just for the being able to fix it in the field.
Yeah. And then what happens? So again, just on that business development side. So what happens? You change one, and then now people start to know that that's happening, right? So then, because even a capacity issue, you think, even if it's maybe another operator is not cracking as fast, I'm imagining you're increasing capacity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of that stuff comes back to we have to do, you have to go out there and look at that market and say, is it customer specific that's having this issue, or is this an issue throughout the industry?
Yeah. And this was
one
industry.
was throughout. Yeah. It was an industry issue. So.
And so before that client, was just everybody out there struggling with it then? And then.
Yeah. I mean, you've got a parameter that they hand you, like this, if it's cracked, here's how you fix it. So everybody was out there doing it, but you're talking about line of fire. You got guys out there working in the field. You got safety hazards, so on and so forth. So if you can fix some of those issues, yeah.
The one thing I'll make a note on that too, that I thought was kind of cool with it, is the handle is basically, it's a big tube with kind of a fork on the end, and typically if it breaks, you can, like Dustin said, you repair it, but it's a casting, it's hard to repair. But with our design and what we're able to actually do is we were able to reuse the tube. So if you have a customer that has a handle in the tube and it's broken, or it's reached its service life, it's often just the fork end, the yoke end, that's basically houred out.
Yeah.
So we can actually cut the tube off of it and then put the tube onto a new end. And then that saves a huge cost because you're not buying a new tube every time.
Are you doing a lot of stuff like that as well? Taking an OEM's design and going, okay, well, this is the wear. Do you ever turn a part that typically wasn't a wear part? It almost sounds like that's what you're doing. You're kind of breaking up the piece, basically.
Yeah.
Right.
Eventually. Yeah.
Yeah. What about on the undercarriage? I wanted to bring that up too, because that you're very strong in that space, right?
Yeah.
The undercarriage design.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was probably very similar. Again, Dustin can speak on the long-term history of it, but same thing. Like, we had customers that weren't seeing the life that they wanted, or they're having failures, like say they're breaking track pads, or they're having premature failures on idler wheels and so forth. And obviously, every time you have a failure, you got to take the machine out of service. It often interrupts your maintenance schedule, right? So you're trying to base everything around a set timeline where you're taking machines down. So it was costing more money all around, both parts and intervals. So yeah, we kind of worked through some of the challenges that they were seeing with that to basically maximize, say, shoe life or increase idler hour life through a bunch of obviously design tweaks and whatnot. And yeah, I know it's been really successful.
Have you seen OEMs then copycat you though? It's just something that comes to my mind is they must.
I mean, they're not copycatting yet, but we have competitors that are, basically reverse engineering. It's funny how this game works, because we reverse engineer somebody else's, and now we're getting reverse engineered. It's kind of flattering.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, but that's the great thing about competition, right?
Yeah.
We're always, pushing each other to reach the next bar. So if you want the cheapest product on the market, we're not your guys.
Right.
And
don't want, like, that's not your focus.
Yeah. We're not gonna compete based on price. We want to, whether it's the yoke end or the undercarriage, we are trying to push the limits on the hours and make it serviceable so that we can keep the people from line of fire.
Hey, Cory, maybe I'll ask your sort of approach to the Canadian market.
Mm-hmm.
What about the people though that it hasn't broken yet, but we can extend, the life 30%, 40. I mean, so I know you've had some cases where it's way long. It's some crazy numbers you've gotten.
Yeah.
How do you sort of get in the door and have that conversation to say, they're performing it within their maintenance schedule, but they can do so much more. You just want to have that conversation.
No, totally. It's actually a really good question. I worked for a mining customer at one point previously, so kind of like understood the, all the hours and planning that goes into it. But honestly, some of the customers do come and say that. They're basically like, we're happy with where it is now. And it's kind of a interesting response to sometimes get. And they're like, I mean, not that you can ever be good enough. I think there's always room for improvement everywhere. But yeah, some of them actually are. They're like, we're fine. Like, we don't need more hours. It fits in, like Dustin said, with the schedules, and we haven't had any issues. So in some cases, yeah, it's a challenging value proposition because they're doing fine.
And then I would really need to touch on the other part. I think with the first interview I think we did with you, we talked a lot about the processing side because you're very strong in that space.
Yeah.
You're like almost reworking some of this gear, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you just sort of touch on it for any? I mean, that was actually quite a while ago now. We had that discussion, so maybe sort of.
Yeah. So the mineral processing side of the business, I mean, we kind of the same thing on the shovel and the mining side, but we've got a lot of projects sitting ahead of us because of customers' wants and needs of not meeting hours. And it's the same situation, taking the issues that those guys are seeing and then reverse engineering, and then through metallurgy and or geometry, we're changing the lifespan of certain components. But it's that side of our business is actually on rapid growth right now.
Yeah.
We don't have enough engineers. That's what we're running into is, I mean, we're so heavy loaded on the engineering side, but it's pretty impressive what we have managed to get done. And we haven't really tackled the Canadian market yet. I mean, we're kind of focused
for the mineral processing.
For the mineral processing. Yeah. We just started here in BC. We just got up and running. I got a sales guy going and we're making our path here in Canada, but there's a lot of stuff out there. So it's,
well, it's just getting
I would say,
yeah,
we're in our infancy, honestly.
Well, and the Canadian, as strong as the Canadian mining market is, I think we're going to see. I mean, I know in Ontario, I mean, there's mines that are like they're trying to expedite getting these mines in the ground. So I'm sure you're probably a good time to get into the Canadian market.
Yeah.
Well, I guess what is the primary deliverable then in the Canadian, like today? Someone, sends an email today. What is the primary service you're focusing on? Whoever wants to.
I mean, I'd say it's shovel components are our main thing. Like the P&H shovels and the cat shovels, large rope shovels are definitely the main thing. I mean, specifically like Dustin said, like Fort McMurray has a lot of machines running.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a natural, fit, and that's just kind of what we've stumbled into essentially.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've got a lot of requests for like the hydraulic machines, like smaller excavator style stuff. And like Dustin said, some of the mineral processing stuff will be a natural fit. There's obviously less specific demand to us right now on it.
It's been interesting though. I mean, there's a switch kind of that's just transpired over the last 3 months, I'd say, to on the mobile side, the support equipment. So we're getting a lot of requests for dozer work, grader work, haul truck components. So we're probably going to be doing a pretty large investment at one of our shops to expand our capabilities so that we can meet the demands.
How do going back to that, because whenever we're talking to L&H, there is a new investment. You're just one of those companies that's always how do you, as sort of on the executive level, sort of pick and choose? Like, I know you've kind of touched on it, but I just see the challenge of it. I mean, I'll use our little tiny world, our little tiny company. I mean, we could be doing commercials and people want us to do like 3-minute promo videos. So we have to say, because we know once you start chasing that, we know there's a lot of competition in those spaces.
Yeah.
It's actually less competition than because long form's hard. Takes a lot of planning, takes a lot of editing, there's a lot of back and forth. So people actually don't want to, they usually do about 5 and then they disappear. I've just seen it over and over again. How do you sort of go, okay, yes, we have capability, but we can't chase that rabbit?
Yeah.
Like, because you can do everything, but how do you sort of focus in and go, we can have a competitive advantage in that market? I know it's a tough question. We probably don't have 2 hours to figure it out, but
it's always circumstance driven. I mean, it's is the market, what's the market doing? Are they pulling you in or are you trying to push in? And that dictates a lot of what type of an investment.
So oil sands, you said kind of that's a pull in.
That's a pull in. Yeah. We're getting pulled into some other, stuff on the, not only the mobile side, but also we're having discussions now with the plant side. So, so that's a pull in, and that type of is so much easier to invest in projects that you're getting pulled into versus having to push in. We've done the push in, And back to the wind turbine shafts. I mean, that was a push into the market.
Yeah.
And it's a long play. It's a 2 to 5 year. And now we actually are putting in a lathe right now specific for that and for the mineral processing componentry. But, it's 32 feet in between centers. I think the chuck is 68 inches and it'll swing 40 tons.
Is that the one you had to like pour like a huge, a couple years ago, doing one, it was like this huge amount of concrete just in base. Which one is that?
Yeah. So that's the VTL. I think that was like 1,300 yards of concrete. I think. Yeah. I think and I'll probably get this wrong. My cousin will be cussing me out, but,
we'll put the correct stat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's the numbers guy.
Yeah.
So, but I believe the lathe is like 900 and some odd yards of concrete to lay that in. But, I mean, when you're swinging 40 tons of steel, it takes a lot.
That's wild. What's, sorry, Cory, just going back to you. What is your message when you're here at an event like CIM? Where do you want the conversation to go when you're talking to people?
I mean, good question. I mean, I think for us, and kind of what drew me to the company too, is just like kind of Dustin, we've already touched on, is like there's lots of innovations that we're kind of nimble to like, hey, they have a problem, we can solve it or look to solve it somehow, some way, with be it large lathes or machinings or even smaller items too, right? So no, I think that's kind of just what I would be always kind of looking for, and I'm always interested to hear, and also happy that we as the company are kind of willing to tackle some of that stuff.
Yeah.
Again, to Dustin's point, it's more of kind of you're being pulled towards it versus being pushed into it. So like we've got, the bread and butter, the mining side of things, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff we could do that's the same, right? Like big pieces of metal are big pieces of metal, whether it's a wind turbine shaft or it's a shaft and a shovel, it's the same thing.
Right.
So yeah, it just kind of seems to be what kind of comes towards us, and what else we can add into that makes sense.
I was wondering also, now a lot of the work, will it still be done? It will be done in the US and then delivered to Canada, right?
Yeah.
In most cases.
Yeah.
And then things like lead times, once you sort of start the work, how does it look like for workload? What just sort of managing expectations for people when they're onboarding?
Yeah. That depends on obviously on the product, and then our supply chain, because we get a lot of forgings and castings from other countries as well. So
I guess that's actually a better question.
Yeah.
That's more where to go, is that supply chain. Is that I haven't heard as much about it in the last few months. Is it kind of getting sorted out? And I know that's not specific. There was a company when we were at Con Expo. I won't say the name of the company. Massive, or they finally just had to basically lease a Freightliner to get their equipment. It was more expensive to try to, so they just rented it, loaded their equipment on because the distributors needed it. It was just a mess. It was just crazy. It was a crazy story, and the number that was attached to it was insane. These are the conversations I get to have off camera. But is that starting to get sorted out? I know it's a big challenge.
Yeah, I think it's getting better. I mean, it has been a lot better. There's still some challenges in the market, and of course, there's new tariffs coming on. I think I read an article where the U.S. is going to start putting some more tariffs on products from other countries. So
does it ever provide opportunity though, because of your capability, that you're able to sort of step in and go, actually, we could do it this way, and so you're not waiting 6 months for a part, that kind of thing?
Yeah. Some of it plays good, and some of it's, again,
it is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, it just depends on what the product is and who the customer is and what their view on their maintenance practices and what kind of value they're buying. And I'll say this too. I mean, to Cory's point, we're always pushing to expand and make product better. And I'll just be straight up, like, we don't always win that game. I mean, we've kicked product out that
you've talked about it before. That
doesn't do what we think it's going to do, so on and so forth. And those are big pills to swallow, not only for us, but also for our customer. And, that's that capital investment. A lot of times we have to have more wins than we have losers, obviously. Otherwise we don't have the capital to put into it. And so I'm proud to say that, we obviously have more wins than losers, but we take care of our side of it when we do have a loser.
Right.
And when you're pushing the envelope, you're going to have some duds.
Well, there's a handful of companies that we've had on that have, and there's a lot of great companies, but that have good reputations. You can go and ask about them. Like one that comes to mind, like a brand like Ditch Witch. You bring up them, everybody just has great things to say. And L&H is just one of those brands. So it's actually quite an honor for us, coming on the show once, twice, but L&H has been on multiple times.
Yeah.
So it's quite an honor for us a company that has that reputation keeps working with us.
Yeah.
Hopefully it says something about what we do as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I really do appreciate it. It's glad to finally do it in person.
Yeah. This is much easier.
Yeah.
I love it.
You haven't had to do one of those.
I haven't.
We make him sit there and look at himself on a monitor and record himself while I'm asking questions, which I know you just love it.
Yeah. I love it.
We'll keep them in person from here on in.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Perfect. Thank you both for being on the show.
Yeah,
thank you. Appreciate it.
And thank you, everybody, for watching. We're going to put links, of course, to L&H, their website, and their LinkedIn, their YouTube channel. We'll have Dustin's LinkedIn, as long as it's okay.
Yep.
People connect directly with you, as well as Cory's. So just go into the description. You'll see them, and you can connect. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We will see you on the next episode of Mining Now.